First of all, I have to say this is super exciting for me to be here because back in the day when I started my first company, there was nothing like this in Vancouver. Some things are the same 18 years later. It still really sucks to raise money and all the rest of it, but some things are different, and it's really great to see an ecosystem starting in Vancouver. So just if you see a common theme amongst the presenters, is because TechVan told us that they wanted us to structure our conversations around lessons learned. So given what's going on with Facebook and everybody calling it an existential moment for them, I thought that I would talk about 3 existential moments that I encountered in my first business. I haven't encountered one so far, thank God, in my second. So a little bit about me. I started out my career way back in the late 80s. Was an engineer, working engineer for many years in a variety of fields, mostly aviation, and then I made a switch to payments, became very interested in it, didn't believe that this is the way finance worked. And so I started my first business here in Vancouver in the year 2000. It's a local company called Hyperwallet. We have about 300 employees now, offices around the world, about $80 million in revenue, raised less than $4 million. So all of that sounds fantastic. There was a lot of hard times to get there. It was a really bootstrap story for a lot of years. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. That company is a global payments company. It's what's called a full stack fintech, sells to businesses to help them pay their 1099 workers around the world. So banks wire money, it costs $80 a clip. Hyperwallet and lots of competitors now in the market help businesses pay Uber drivers and Mary Kay workers, etc. That's the first business. Took that business, as I said, sort of mostly bootstrapped, some angel money, to a private equity exit in 2014, stayed around for a year, recruited a new US CEO, stepped off. I'm still on the board, still watching the company grow and succeed. It's grown and succeeded faster since I left than when I was running it. And took a year off, did gardening leave, and then started a year and a half ago this new company called FISPAN. So I'm going to quickly, before I get into lessons learned, I'm going to tell you a little bit about FISPAN. And so it's definitely your second time you start, well at least I did, a business which is sort of what I call thesis driven, based on my observations in the industry I was in for 15 years. And so what we believe is that businesses fundamentally want to reduce people's spreadsheets and paper from their back office, and that banks fundamentally struggle, like embracing this era of API and open banking, because to date in the industry, the discourse has all been about making it easier to suck data out of banks into fintechs and others and sort of accelerate the commoditization of banking. And finally, we believe that fintechs really struggle with cost of customer acquisition and the burden of compliance relative to their oftentimes quite narrow offering. So we developed a thesis and a business that's trying to solve for these 3 problems. What we've built is an API orchestration platform for banks that provides API open banking in the form of plugins into ERP and accounting systems so that banks' products and services are directly exposed in applications like SAP and QuickBooks and NetSuite. But importantly, a market access and automated compliance services for fintechs that service businesses by pre-integrating their APIs. So that's what FISPAN does. We're very early stage. We just signed our first couple banks. We were wrong about the market. We thought it would be small banks that would be interested. It turns out it's larger institutions. So yay for us. Also, we were completely wrong about fintech aggregation as being the compelling market opportunity. Turns out the compelling market opportunity is over here, having banks get new business banking channels. Anyway, that's enough about me in terms of what FISPAN's doing. I have probably 2 minutes left. I wanted to talk about 3 existential moments that I encountered. The first was within six months of starting my first business, and basically we lost our product. And we were reliant on market access through financial institutions at the time. A lot of, whether you're a e-commerce company and you rely on one payments processor, or you're a new crypto startup and you can't even get a bank account, we were in the same situation. We thought we'd been very, very clever and built a fraud-free product, which We had, but we didn't realize that online banking itself was insecure. And so we got a knock on the door, and just as we were launching, we were cut off from all banks in Canada, and we had nothing to do. And so I ran around with the 666 on my head and tried to resurrect anything. We got through that basically because we hadn't yet burned through the little amount of capital we'd raised. But it became really tough. And so the second existential moment was a year and a half later, about where I am now with FISPAN. And just again, to put it in context, we were about 10 people at that time. We couldn't make payroll. And my co-founder decided to go walkabout, and we had to decide as a business, were we going to become, and literally it was a blood on the wall meeting, are we going to become a sales and marketing company and fire all the engineers, or are we going to become a product company and fire everybody else except the engineers? And I was the engineering co-founder, and I got left holding the bag, and so we just became engineers, sort of, 5 engineers, hoping that because we had the best product, the market would come to us. It didn't, but we did, we were able to sort of bootstrap and sell our souls and do custom software development on our platform for a number of years, and we tried everything in the world until finally the market kind of caught up with what we were trying to do. And our hockey stick really started sort of 8 years after, 8 years into the business. And then my third existential moment, which people may see this because it's on Netflix now. Anybody seen the Netflix series, is it called Blood Money or Dirty Money? One of the episodes, I lived one of those episodes, which was HSBC's got caught money laundering around the world. And I had been lazy. By this time, Hyperwallet had operations in about 30 countries. And I had been lazy on one key supplier. And I thought I had such a special relationship with this one global bank, and I had access to local clearing networks all around through this one bank. And we had the most glorious thing. We had a term sheet to buy my company. I had a term sheet from a PE organization that was going to buy us. We're in diligence. We're in not final diligence, but we were in an exclusivity period with our PE company. And my bank comes and sits me down, and I get the paper pushed across the table. I'm in my boardroom. I've got the executive team there. I didn't need to open that envelope. I knew what that was. They were, the bank was de-risking different industries around. And so anybody who, by the way, who's in crypto and all this stuff, I feel for you, because you are going to be de-risked. You're going to lose your product. Some of your biggest customers are going to blow up. But hopefully you've got all that resilience that you talked about. Anyway, I'm a slow learner. I was in the sort of remedial class because I let it happen again. I got lazy. I relied on that single supplier, and I thought I was a special snowflake, and that because I bent over backwards and entertained my banks and sort of educated them about how I was one of the good guys. Fintechs back in that day were bad guys, but I was one of the good guys, that somehow I would be immune to this. I wasn't. Our deal blew up. We nearly lost the business at that stage, and that was 2012, so I was looking at a pretty dark time. But as I said, you recoup, get stronger, never have a single supplier, and the business is doing well. Thank you very much. I've used my 5 minutes. Any questions?
How did you recover from that last one? Because 2012, you've been doing it for like 10 years now. That got to be soulless.
Yeah, actually, the interesting thing was I was able to cover myself. In other words, I didn't crumble in front of my team in that situation. And I had a board, and I needed to call the board, and all the rest of that good stuff. And the board didn't support me. But everybody says what does not kill you makes you stronger. That's a lie. It actually is a lie. When you get knocked down, like I liken it to that sort of punching bag, that every time you hit the punching bag, it pops back up until eventually the air is deflated and it just can't take it. And so, yeah, I went home and there was cheap vodka consumed. But the difference was, by this time I did have a team around me. And actually, if I'm honest, it wasn't me that totally rallied. It was my head of sales. What we actually did was we repurposed the sales team for a month. Was no longer calling customers, we were calling banks around the world. And to get, alternative smaller bank accounts around the world. So that's the honest truth.
Just a quick question. You said don't let one company become like your only egg basket. So how do you protect yourself against that, or how would you protect yourself against that? If you found yourself in that position, could you change the relationship? Could you change your interaction with that company at all, or would you just go out and find more sources?
Yeah, the true answer is go out and find more sources, and if you can't because you're so small and you've got a million other things, realize that it's an Achilles heel. The wrong answer is say, try and negotiate a stronger contract, especially when you're small. You have no leverage, right? And so negotiating a better contract is a mug's game. Go and try and find another supplier, especially if it's critical to you providing your services.
Sorry, just follow-up question. Have you ever found that if you're in a better position to negotiate stronger contracts with other companies, have those contracts put you in a better position with them canceling?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I had a couple business partners whose competitive advantage was their, really, really tight and, I'm going to call it reptilian contracts. And they were very, very aggressive about that. And they were an ISO and a sales-driven organization. And that really was a competitive advantage for them. Our competitive advantage was the exact opposite. And I don't know how many people here are sort of engineers or product types. But our contracts we never locked a customer into anything. And so, again, I don't want to sound, who said they didn't want to sound Pollyannish about it, but, the truth is when you're a little guy, the last thing you're going to spend money on is to try and go to a lawyer to try and enforce a contract, because it's just never going to work for you. Your money will be better spent building a better product or having better customer service people and a better relationship.
So it was almost more the other things that you could actually provide some force behind, like building a better product.
Exactly. That was the smarter investment in my view, and it still is today.
I'll ask another question. How you've stated basically your second company is in the same space as your first company. How has that prepared you better for success with this new one?
How many people here are second-time entrepreneurs? Okay. So most people are first-time. I hate to tell it to you guys, but it's way easier the second time. It's so much easier. And Vancouver's a small town, so in April of 2014, I was, it's a no-hoper, it'll never work, we tried to fund it, it's been around, I haven't heard much of it. And then in May of 2014, once there's a transaction done, suddenly everybody's lauding you and thinking that you have wisdom to dispense. So the truth is, the second time around, access to people is so much easier. What was the exact question? Why am I doing?
What's the benefits? It's like you're both are fintech companies, right?
Right.
So why did you go back to another fintech company, or what was the benefit of the second fintech company?
When I knew I really wanted to do another company, I knew that there are just so many opportunities in financial services. I didn't want to do another payments company, highly regulated. It was, and I had some competitive non-starters there. But when you're with a business for a number of years and you see things in the industry, you can see more opportunities. So it is easier the second time. But customers don't care. Customers couldn't care less.
I find your story personally fascinating. Do you mentor other entrepreneurs, or do you help them in any way? Sharing your story?
I consider, I like doing things like this. And as I said, during my year off on gardening leave, and gardening leave is when you're not allowed to do anything, I participated in some stuff, but now I owe it to my shareholders. Mostly I spend time on FISPAN, right? And so that's mostly what I do.
Thank you.
How would you recommend finding, I guess, a mentor? I just moved here 3 months ago.
Finding a mentor. Look, where's the guy from PwC? He was here. Honestly, in Vancouver, your lawyers and PwC was our first mentor. They sort of, because I was an engineer, I wasn't in accounting. Those type of organizations, as well as things like this, are very useful. But you would be surprised how many really, not only smart but interested in helping out young companies there are at the big accounting firms, right? Because those are the people that maybe have some entrepreneurial bent, but have reasons why they want to, still work and collect their good paycheck. Great, thank you very much.